You can wait outside." The words seemed to hang in the air of the conference hall, sharp and deliberate, as every head turned toward me at once. My grip tightened around my presentation folder, the same one holding 6 months of research, modeling, and analysis that had quietly saved the company millions without ever making a headline. "Excuse me?" I asked, my voice nearly swallowed by the clink of champagne flutes and low laughter. Renata, our marketing director, barely looked at me as she flicked her wrist in a dismissive gesture. "We're at capacity for the ceremony," she said. "You understand." I didn't respond right away. I scanned the room instead. Every table draped in cream linen was filled, every seat occupied. People from my department sat comfortably, chatting, smiling, waiting for the evening to begin. Even Ren was there. Ren, the intern who had been with us for exactly 3 weeks. The same Ren who had presented my supply chain algorithm as her own at last month's board meeting and been praised for her initiative. "Why would we waste a seat on you?" Renata added, her smile thin and precise. "You're just an analyst." In that instant, everything snapped into focus. The missed promotions, the ideas quietly redirected upward, the nights I stayed late while others took credit and went home early. My eyes drifted to the massive projection screen at the front of the room, where the Innovation Excellence Award rotated slowly, glowing in gold letters. An award that existed because of my work, my systems, my models, and yet my name was nowhere to be found. "I see," I said evenly, setting my folder down and opening my laptop. "Check your email." I didn't wait to see her reaction. One by one, notification chimes echoed through the hall. Polite at first, then overlapping, then frantic. I turned and walked away as voices rose behind me, suddenly sharp and urgent. The doors closed, cutting off the noise and sealing that moment behind me. Before I tell you what happened next, stop for a second and picture it. Standing there while years of effort are dismissed with a sentence. Watching someone else prepared to accept praise built on your labor. If you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or quietly erased, you already understand why what followed changed everything. Stay with me, because this wasn't a spontaneous reaction. This was 3 years in the making, and the ending will show you why patience isn't just a virtue, it's leverage. My name is Belle Novak, and until that evening, I was the senior data analyst at one of the fastest growing logistics firms in the country. I have an eidetic memory and an instinct for finding order in chaos. Those traits made me exceptional at my job and catastrophically unprepared for corporate politics. I believed work should speak for itself. I believed results mattered more than recognition. I was wrong. I was raised in a small town where my father ran the local library and my mother taught mathematics. They taught me that merit would always rise, that effort would eventually be seen. When I joined the company after completing dual master's degrees, I thought I had found a place that shared those values. My first year reinforced that belief. I built an inventory tracking system that reduced errors by 37%. I developed predictive models that allowed clients to optimize shipping routes with remarkable efficiency. I identified a flaw in our flagship software that would have cost us our largest client if it had gone unnoticed. I followed protocol. I documented everything. I trusted the system. The problems began in my second year when Dominic arrived as our new department head. He was praised as a fixer, someone who transformed struggling divisions. What wasn't mentioned was how he did it. Success flowed upward to him. Accountability flowed downward to everyone else. The first time he took credit for my work, I assumed it was an oversight. I had designed an algorithm to predict shipping delays using weather patterns and port congestion data. I walked him through it privately, line by line. 2 weeks later, I watched him present it to executive leadership as his own innovation. When I congratulated him afterward, expecting a correction, he looked at me blankly. "The framework was mine," he said. "You just helped with the numbers." I didn't argue. I told myself it wasn't worth it. That was my first mistake. The pattern repeated. I would identify a problem, create a solution, pass it to Dominic, and watch it reappear under his name. When I finally went to HR, Aliana asked for documentation without looking up from her screen. When I produced files, timestamps, and drafts, she asked if the work had been done using company resources. When I said yes, she closed the conversation. Ideas belong to the company. Managers present departmental achievements. That's how it works. I could have endured that if it hadn't escalated. 6 months ago, I discovered inefficiencies in our cross-continental routes and spent weekends building a new logistics framework. The potential savings were staggering. I prepared meticulously for the quarterly strategy meeting. Dominic stopped me at the door and took my materials, promising to summarize them. He didn't. 2 weeks later, Ren arrived. Ivy League credentials, CEO's niece. 3 weeks after that, she presented my framework with cosmetic changes and a new title. It was approved immediately. She was celebrated. When I confronted Dominic, he shrugged. "This is business," he said. "Influence matters more than origin." That night, surrounded by 3 years of work that had enriched everyone but me, something shifted. I began working on a project of my own, outside office hours on personal equipment. I refined my framework, improved it, and documented everything. I tracked every instance of misattribution. I spoke with former employees who had left under similar circumstances. I wasn't alone. Together, we formed something stronger than resentment. We formed a plan. 3 months before the ceremony, I pitched a venture capitalist my enhanced framework and a team ready to leave with me. Funding followed. Clients followed. Everything was ready. And now, standing at the entrance of that grand hall, watching Renata dismiss me while Ren smiled, 3 years of accumulated slights hardened into clarity. "You can wait outside." As I stood there, absorbing the casual cruelty of her words and the certainty of what I had already set in motion, I knew this was the last time I would ever be asked to wait. I knew exactly what I needed to do the moment I sent that email containing our resignation letters, client transfer notifications, patent applications, and the press release scheduled for the following morning. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders as notification sounds chimed throughout the room. I walked away without looking back. I had only reached the parking garage when my phone began ringing. The CEO's name flashed on my screen. I declined the call. Then came texts from Dominic, then Aliana from HR. I ignored them all. If you're still with me, thank you for your patience. The journey I've shared so far is one many of you might recognize. The frustration of having your contributions overlooked, your ideas stolen, your potential dismissed. If this resonates with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to hear stories of others who found their power in unexpected ways.
Because what happened next wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine while creating something even better. As I walked to my car, I felt my phone vibrating continuously in my pocket. I finally pulled it out to see 7 missed calls from the CEO, 3 from Dominic, and a flurry of increasingly desperate text messages. The most revealing came from Renata. "Whatever they're offering you, we'll double it. Come back inside now." That's when I knew they had finally read what I sent. Comprehensive documentation showing how my stolen algorithm had been fundamental to the company's recent success, along with proof that their version, the one credited to Ren, was merely a shadow of my complete innovation. I was unlocking my car when I heard rapid footsteps behind me. I turned to find Vincent, our vice president, breathing heavily after chasing me down 3 flights of stairs. "Belle, wait!" he gasped, his usually impeccable appearance now disheveled. "You can't just leave like this. The company needs you." I regarded him quietly. Interesting. An hour ago, I wasn't even worth a seat at the ceremony. "That was a misunderstanding," he said, straightening his tie. "A clerical error." Was it also a clerical error when my name was removed from the quarterly reports, or when Ren presented my work as her own, or when I was passed over for promotion 3 times while watching others advance using my innovations? Vincent's expression tightened. Business is complicated. Individual contributions often get absorbed into larger initiatives. "Yes, I've noticed whose contributions get absorbed and whose get celebrated," I replied, "but that's no longer my concern. The clients you've contacted are bound by exclusivity agreements. They can't simply switch to your startup." I smiled for the first time that day. "You might want to review those agreements again. The language restricts them from working with your competitors, but since my solution operates on an entirely different framework, one I developed independently on my own time, it creates a new category. Your legal team confirmed this when they reviewed the original concept 6 months ago and determined it wasn't worth pursuing. Vincent's face paled. What do you want? A promotion? Equity? Name it. What I wanted was recognition for my work, respect for my contributions, a seat at the table I helped build. I opened my car door. But you've shown me something more valuable, that I don't need your table. I can build my own. As I drove away, I watched in my rearview mirror as more company executives poured into the parking garage, their award ceremony completely forgotten. My phone continued buzzing with notifications. I pulled over briefly to silence it, but not before seeing a message from Tamsin. It's done. We're all out meeting you at the new office. The new office was a converted industrial space I had leased under a holding company name 3 weeks earlier. When I arrived, my team was already there. Tamsin, Leo, and 5 other colleagues who had suffered similar experiences at our former employer. Each had submitted their resignations simultaneously with mine, creating a talent exodus the company couldn't possibly recover from quickly. Did they try to stop you? Asked Meredith, our operations specialist, who had been repeatedly overlooked despite generating our former employer's most profitable client relationships. Vincent chased me to the parking garage, I replied, offered me anything I wanted. Bet that felt good, Leo said, handing me a cup of coffee from the machine we'd installed the previous weekend. Not as good as this, Will, I said, opening my laptop to show them the response we'd received from our first major client. They had not only agreed to transfer their business to us, but had introduced us to 2 additional prospects impressed by our innovative approach. Over the next several hours, we finalized our launch strategy. Our company, Nexus Paradigm, would officially announce its existence the following morning with our proprietary logistics framework as its flagship offering. The patents I'd filed would protect our intellectual property, and the client agreements we'd secured would give us immediate revenue. At 7:30 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't know. I almost ignored it until Tamsin glanced at the screen. That's the board chairman's private line, she said quietly. I answered, putting it on speaker so my team could hear. Ms. Novak, came the growly voice of Preston Fulton, the rarely seen chairman of my former company's board. I believe we need to talk. I'm listening, I replied. I've spent the afternoon reviewing the situation. The documentation you provided is concerning. I'd like to meet with you privately to discuss a resolution. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Fulton, but there's nothing to resolve. My decision is final. Perhaps I haven't made myself clear, his tone hardened. Our company has resources you cannot imagine. If you proceed with this venture of yours, we will be forced to take measures to protect our interests. Are you threatening me? I asked calmly. I'm outlining consequences. Legal action for breach of confidentiality, claims against your patents. We can ensure your startup never gets off the ground. I signaled to Leo, who began recording the call. Mr. Fulton, everything I've done is legal and documented. The innovations I'm taking forward were created on my personal time using my personal resources. Your own legal team confirmed they were distinct from company property. As for confidentiality, I've disclosed no proprietary information. I've simply informed clients that I'm starting a new business and invited them to consider our services. Clients who are contractually obligated to us, he countered. Clients whose contracts include performance clauses that you've repeatedly failed to meet. I didn't need to persuade them to leave. I simply offered them a better option when they were already looking elsewhere. The line went silent for a moment. What would it take to bring you back? He finally asked, his voice noticeably softer. Name your terms. I looked around at my team, talented professionals who had been undervalued, overlooked, and exploited. People who had trusted me enough to take this leap together. There are no terms, Mr. Fulton. This isn't a negotiation tactic. It's a new beginning. After ending the call, we spent hours preparing for the media response we anticipated following our announcement. By midnight, exhausted but exhilarated, we gathered around the conference table we'd assembled ourselves the previous weekend. To Nexus Paradigm, Tamsin said, raising a paper cup of vending machine coffee, and to Belle, who showed us all what's possible when you refuse to stay where you're not valued. It's not just about me, I insisted. Every person in this room made this possible. We're building something together that none of us could create alone. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in years, despite the uncertainty ahead. The next morning, our press release went out at exactly 8 a.m., just as the trading day began. By 8:15, financial news sites were reporting on the sudden emergence of a disruptive new player in the logistics sector. By 9, they were reporting on the subsequent drop in my former employer's stock price. By 9:30, we gathered around a screen to watch our former CEO give an emergency press conference. His usual confidence was nowhere to be seen as he attempted to reassure investors that a few employees would not impact operations.
The market disagreed. The stock dropped another 7% during his 17-minute speech. When he announced that Dominic would be stepping down to pursue other opportunities, I felt no satisfaction, only confirmation that the company would continue its pattern of scapegoating individuals rather than addressing its toxic culture. By noon, our phones were ringing constantly with calls from potential clients, investors, and even former colleagues interested in joining us. The industry had taken notice, and our calendar quickly filled with meetings. What my former employer had failed to understand was that true innovation doesn't come from titles or hierarchies. It comes from valuing the people who generate ideas. 1 week after our launch, as we prepared for a meeting with our largest new client, I received an email from Ren. The subject line read, simply, "I didn't know." The message was brief. I was told the framework was collaborative, with your minor contributions already compensated. I never intended to take credit for your work. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I started to type a response, then stopped. Her apology might have been sincere, but it changed nothing. She had been a symptom of the problem, not its cause. Instead of replying, I closed the email and focused on preparing for our client meeting. 3 months after our launch, Nexus Paradigm had secured contracts with 27 clients, including 3 of the largest shipping companies in the country. Our revolutionary approach to logistics optimization had reduced costs for our clients by an average of 31%, exceeding even my original projections. We had grown from 8 employees to 23, carefully selecting people who brought both skill and integrity to their roles. The true vindication came 6 months after the award ceremony that had changed everything. My former company announced a strategic restructuring that industry analysts recognized as a desperate attempt to remain competitive. Their stock had fallen 43% since our launch, and rumors of a potential buyout were circulating on financial news sites. I was reviewing our quarterly results when my assistant mentioned that Vincent, the former VP, was in our reception area asking to meet with me. Did he have an appointment? I asked. No, she replied, but he said it was important. I considered sending him away, but decided against it. Whatever he wanted, I was curious enough to hear it. When Vincent entered my office, the change in him was striking. The confident executive had been replaced by someone who looked as though he hadn't slept properly in weeks. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, remaining standing until I gestured toward a chair. "What can I do for you, Vincent?" He placed a folder on my desk. "This is a formal acquisition offer. The board wants to purchase Nexus Paradigm and integrate your technologies into our existing framework." I opened the folder, glanced at the figure on the first page, and closed it again. "That's a substantial offer," I acknowledged. "It reflects the value of what you've built," he replied, "and the cost of competing against you. Why are you the one delivering this? Where's the investment team?" Vincent shifted uncomfortably. "The board thought you might be more receptive if the approach came from someone you knew. Even though that someone told me I wasn't worth a seat at the table? I never said it. You never had to say it. You showed it in every decision, every meeting invitation that never came, every time you let someone else take credit for work they didn't do." Vincent looked down at his hands. "The company has changed since you left. We've implemented new policies on innovation recognition, created mentorship programs, restructured compensation to reward original thinking.
all things that could have been done before if anyone had cared enough to listen. Yes, he admitted quietly, that's why I'm really here, not just for the acquisition offer, but to ask, would you consider returning as Chief Innovation Officer, reporting directly to the board? I studied him for a moment, recognizing the desperation behind the offer. 6 months ago, such recognition would have meant everything to me. Now it felt hollow. I'm going to review your acquisition offer with my team and our advisors, I said carefully, but I won't be returning as an employee under any circumstances. I've built something I believe in here, with people who value each other's contributions. That's not something I'm willing to compromise. After Vincent left, I sat alone in my office, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The pain of being overlooked had transformed into the power of creating something authentic. The colleagues who had once dismissed me were now approaching me as equals or seeking my approval. But the true victory wasn't in their recognition. It was in discovering that the table I had fought so hard to sit at wasn't worth a place at all. By building my own company, I had created not just a seat for myself, but a place where everyone's contributions were valued. The revenge I had planned had succeeded beyond my expectations, but its sweetest fruit wasn't watching my former employer struggle, it was watching my new company thrive. We weren't just profitable, we were creating a workplace where innovation flourished because people felt safe sharing their ideas. 6 months after that meeting with Vincent, we declined the acquisition offer and instead announced an international expansion. 1 year after the award ceremony, where I'd been told to wait outside, I was invited to give the keynote address at the industry's largest conference. As I walked onto that stage, I saw faces I recognized in the audience, including several from my former company. But this time, they weren't looking at me with dismissal or contempt. They were looking at me with something new: respect. I began my speech with the same words that had once been used to exclude me. "You can wait outside." A murmur ran through the audience. "Those words changed my life," I continued, "not because they hurt, though they did, but because they finally showed me the truth, that I was waiting for recognition from people who would never give it freely, that I was measuring my worth by their standards rather than my own." The room fell silent as I shared my journey from overlooked analyst to industry innovator. I didn't name my former employer or colleagues. I didn't need to. The story wasn't about them anymore. It was about the power of knowing your own value, even when others fail to see it. I looked out at the faces watching me, some inspired, some uncomfortable, all attentive, and delivered my final thought. The most powerful seat isn't the one others save for you, it's the one you build yourself.